Welcome back, folks. Time for part 3 of this Thermoquad carburetor. I had mentioned in a video before how there was 10 bolts that secured the top to the bottom. That's what they look like there. Fairly long, nicely made. Okay. I had mentioned about the jets in this thing. I have the primary jets here and a metering rod that goes with it. They don't make them anymore, so I'll show you how to resize these later in a future video, but that's it right there. Tiny little jet there, that's the primary side. And we have the primary metering rod for the same jet. It's just a tiny little thing. It's stepped down in a taper on the end, and there's a number stamped on it to indicate what size it is. You can get various sizes. Like, they don't make these anymore. There might be someone who makes them aftermarket and sells them on the internet. I'm not sure. You'll have to look for them if you're interested in these things. But I'll get into the specifications for that later. I guess we can also show you secondary jet. They just screw on here. And like I mentioned, that inside the secondary jet was another hollow rod with air bleeds that come into it. That's right here if you can see it. Try to center this video for you. It's just a tube. You don't mess with those. You just leave them alone and make sure they're clean. Okay. And here's the secondary jet. It's a big long thing. Unlike most jets that sit in carb bowls, much like the small primary one I just showed you, this is a fairly long skookum looking thing. And they're fairly easy to size, these ones. They actually got the size of the orifice diameter, and here it's stamped right in here. On this particular one, out of this 440 truck carb I'd mentioned, the number stamped on it is 5137. 5 would probably be a model of some kind, or a date, but the 137 is the actual size of the opening in there. It's 137 thousandths of an inch, just over 1/8 of an inch. They come in various sizes. I've seen them as large as, I think it's 143 thousandths. But everything depends on the application and what the engineer designed in that carb and for what engine it was supposed to go on top of. Okay, with that aside, we can show you about these floats. I've never done this before. I've actually cut one of these floats in half to show you what's inside, but like I was saying, there's one that sits there and one that sits in this other cavity here. This is the top air horn, and it's upside down, it's inverted, just to show you how it's how the float works. There's just a little hinge pin here. Some have what looks like a nail top to them, and others I've seen are just a plain rod, no nail head on it whatsoever. So they're all a little bit different, depending on what year they were made and what they were for. And onto the float. These are what they call nitrofill. They look like a black plastic kind of a thing. The problem with these, especially the early made ones, is they tend to absorb gas. And what happens when they absorb gas is the equivalent to a brass float being full of gas or getting some gas in it because of a leak in a solder joint or what have you. And then they start to sink, and then you get a really rich running carb. It'll start to flood on you if it's bad enough. I've had that happen to me once. That's the float in its normal state. And what I've done earlier today is I've taken the other one out the other side, and I've cut it in half so you and I both could see what's inside. Apparently what it is a closed cellular foam. Apparently the aftermarket ones that they made at a later date have improved on the quality or composition of the material used, so it doesn't absorb fuel as readily. They appear to be lasting much longer than the ones that I've tried. Like I say, the aftermarket ones. This one's a little bit on the grimy side. It's a $25 carb I was telling you about. It's all rusty and everything from sitting around. We're not really going to get too much into rebuilding at this point, just to show you a few different basic things in this video. Kind of keep it kind of short. Out of an old one I rebuilt years ago, this is what the accelerator pump looks like, and as you see, they can get dried up and chipped pretty bad if they're not used regularly, or else old age deterioration. They really start to break up and whatnot. What would happen in this case, an accelerator pump, Every time you push on the gas pedal it would try to squirt, but because of the chip missing here, and even if you get one that's got hardened material on it, it won't shoot that stream of gas into your primaries and you'll get a flat spot. So rebuilding from time to time is a good idea. Things do deteriorate with age, even if they're just left sitting with no wear at all. Yeah, I've got a few bits and pieces here. This is one of the needles. Actually, I got one still in here. I can just pull that out for you. That's where the needle and seat to allow the gas. The float actuates this needle inside the seat in order to let the gas into the float bowl, and the float regulates the fuel level in the float bowl so it's at the correct height in order to get the right mixture. That's all it is. It's just a little brass needle with, I believe it's a material called Viton, if I'm not mistaken, unless they've maybe upgraded the kind of material, but that was one that they went from, like an old rubber in the old days. It's called Viton, I believe. But all these, when you renew the carb, you get a carb rebuild kit, they usually give you needles and seats, so you just take a nice fitting screwdriver in there. Or if you're one of those guys that is a puritist, you can get the proper jet type tool. But a good fitting screwdriver, as long as you're careful, you're fine. That's all you do is unscrew that. There may or may not be a steel washer or another composition washer under there. I think I've seen them before. They have a flat, thin steel washer under there. But you just, when you rebuild it, you just basically clean it up, screw one in, and drop your needle back into the seat. And then again, you just install the float with the hinge pin in there. Another part where I was saying about those little gaskets. Remember these little guys here? They were the fancy little rubber. There's some kind of composition, not just rubber. They actually fit. This is the part here that fits down into the float bowl, like I was discussing. Oops, we're losing parts. Anyway, that's the little part that slips down into the float bowl there. And where the seal is very important to make sure it works. It just sits on top of there. This is upside down, mind you. And then it goes down into the float bowl. And it's once you do up those 10 bolts, it'll squeeze it tight in there and create a good seal for you so you don't get a leak. That's probably the most important part of these Thermoquads, this little guy here. Like I say, the earlier ones, they used a leathery type material or something. At least the one I've taken out was all dried up. No good for anybody at that point. But these new improved ones are working excellent, no problem at all. So that's all I'm going to say for today on the old Thermoquad. There will be hopefully future videos about carburation and stuff, maybe help you guys out a little bit. I've sure learned a lot in the amount of hours I've spent, in particular this one. I pretty much served an apprenticeship on this on my own, just tinkering with it and trying different things and see what happens. But I'll pass along that information as I see fit, and that's all I'm going to say for today. Thanks a lot, folks, for watching. Take care, and bye for now.